Hey there folks, it's Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, and I have these 4 chapters in here about different ballad styles, and I'm trying to cover each of them in a video. So this is the second video about essential ballad styles. The first one covered the stop-start rubato ballad. I'd encourage you to go watch that. But this is what I call the repeated quarter note ballad. And this is one of my favorite styles to play. And let me play a little bit for you, and then we'll break it down, and I'll tell you exactly how it works. So this is When I Fall in Love, one of the great jazz standards. So here it goes. Repeated quarter note ballad sounds. And a few just kind of ground rules for this ballad is that first thing is this is a straight eighth ballad style. Notice I'm not swinging the eighth, and this ballad style sounds a little bit weird to me, at least. If you do try to swing the eighth, it'd be I can't even do it. It's just kind of really left-footed. So generally in this ballad style, you do want straight eighths. You'll notice this is kind of a more serious approach. So I wouldn't use this for kind of a more casual, jokey song. This is really intimate. This is you telling somebody that you love them. It's something, for a whispered kind of an approach. It's not... it's not for that barroom, barrel house kind of rollicking feel. This is like a serious ballad style. It's also not virtuosic. If you want a virtuosic ballad style, that stop-start rubato ballad that I covered in the first part of this series is really the one for you. So it's straight eighth, and then I'm mostly playing what I think of as 5 or 6 note shared hands voicings. And I've covered shared hand voicings a lot. I do cover them multiple times in this book, but there's other videos out there if you're not, or if you're interested in hearing me talk about it. So just do a search for shared hand voicings, or I think I said pro-level jazz piano voicings. And so that's what's at the basis of this, is that I'm finding these voicings. 5, 6 notes in the middle of the piano, shared between the 2 hands. That's why they're called shared hand voicings. Are just reaching towards the middle of the piano to cover as much color as possible. Okay. To create the most basic version of this ballad, it's actually pretty easy. What you want to do is take a note in the kind of tenor range. Most commonly, for me, this is going to be the thumb of my left hand. Sometimes it'll be the thumb of my right hand, sometimes it'll be some other fingers, depending if I'm going really low in the register or if I'm up really high. It's certainly not a hard and fast rule, but for starters, I'd think about using the thumb of your left hand. Or sometimes, if the voice leading really works, you can kind of trade off between the two thumbs. And you're going to softly repeat this. And this is supposed to sound like the brushes of a snare drum. So this is like kind of simulating a rhythm section. Right? Now, balance is so key here. You have to play that repeated note so softly, right? If it's too loud, then it's going to feel really aggressive and it's going to overshadow the melody, and we really don't want this. This is just a timekeeper. It wants to be felt, not heard. So listen for the balance here. Now I'm really concentrating. You don't want your melody to have to fight. You don't want to have to shout. So now I'm in the thumb of the right hand. See, the top finger of the left hand is repeating, hopefully very softly. Still the top of the left hand. Still that thumb of the left hand. Thumb of the left hand still repeating. So the balance is just paramount here. That's probably priority number one, the thing that I hear screwed up most about this style of ballad. The other thing that I think is sometimes misleading for some people who are trying to get this right is that you really do only want to repeat one or maybe two notes. And actually, it's kind of fun. To me, this is like the difference between a jazz ballad and a pop ballad. It's so it's such a small difference. But if I were to repeat all these notes, and I'm also going to play a little bit louder because that's how they play generally in a pop style, this starts sounding more like a pop style ballad. And so we do that same thing in this style of ballad, but we make it much more subtle because, again, we're imitating brushes on the snare drum. Whereas think about what a pop pianist is simulating. They're kind of simulating a whole drum set. So I'll often be grabbing double notes with my thumb. In that case, I'll repeat two notes. Otherwise, I'm mostly just repeating one here, right? If I start doing this, the whole time feel changes. Okay, so it's just a chord with one note repeated. By the way, I haven't mentioned yet, this style is more kind of common in modern piano players. You hear Brad Mehldau doing this a lot on Live in Tokyo, for Hersch. I'll show you some Keith Jarrett variations of this, Rand Blake, Richie Byrack, players like that is mainly where I find this style, just in case you're wondering. Okay. So now you've got this rhythm section going, right? You've got the chord with this nice 5 or 6 note voicing. You've got you've got the brushes on the snare drum. Now the next thing is the melody, and I think what's difficult about this is that the focus is really on the melody here, right? There's not a lot going on. In the stop-start rubato ballad that I showed you, there's the melody and then there's a ton of commentary, right? You can dazzle. Other than melody going on. But here, it's just voicings and melody, which means that you need to really think like a singer as you perform this melody. That means that you're not going to go and play the melody exactly as it's written out. Because then this just so boring and rhythmically dull. So think like a singer, add some rhythmic variety. Back phrasing is especially important. If you don't know what back phrasing means, that means basically delaying the melody by usually about a couple of beats, although, some singers, Betty Carter is probably best known among them, will really delay the melody even longer and then eventually catch up or never catch up. So if you notice, I'll wait 2 or 3 beats before starting this melody. So it might go like this. 2, 3, 4, 1. Do you hear I delayed the melody a whole measure? 1, 2, 3. Melody here is to fool around with some articulation. Not make it necessarily just all the most legato of legato, but could it be a little playful in some places and have some staccato or some little 2-note slurs, right? Be forever, right? Or I'll never fall in love. So and I'm trying to play it conversationally, right? Obviously there's a lot of space for a conversation. Or I'll never fall. Sing it. I would sing it really conversationally with a lot of back phrasing. With some of the phrases maybe a little bit compress them. Choose notes, choose important words to stretch out on a little bit. But the way that you play the melody is so essential in this style. And it's tough because your right hand's doing those two things at once, right? It's got to grab some chord tones to help out with that shared hand voicing, but it also needs to be really expressive with the melody. One thing I definitely practice would be practicing just the melody. 1, 2, and just really experimenting. How beautiful can you make that melody just by itself? Get that nice phrasing going with your shoulder, your upper arm, your elbow, so that your fingers aren't doing too much. Okay, so you got to play the melody real good. And by the way, you might be thinking, okay, articulation, staccato, so what am I doing with my pedal? Because if you're pedaling too much, then you're not really going to be able to hear the clarity of the melody. That's just way too much. So I'm doing some real shallow pedals. This is a real art. And I'm trying to lift about every quarter note. So I'm helping to kind of create a little bit of atmosphere and bridge the gap between chords. But a lot of this is done with fingers. Fingers. The pedal is just helping out where I need to bridge the gap between fingers. So definitely, as much as possible, practice without the pedal and then add it back in. All right, now we've got the repeated notes, we got the voicings, we got the melody, we got a little bit of pedal in here. So what else is happening? I know you're probably curious about these middle lines, and I am going to get there. But first, I want to talk about the first 2 things that I would probably do to start kind of ornamenting this ballad. Because it is a very middle of the piano focused ballad, right? Because I've got these shared hands voicings, everything is towards the center. So I do try to find moments when I can hit a bass note or when I can hit some kind of a chord or fill in the upper register, just to balance out the sound, make it a little bit more orchestral. And oftentimes this can be kind of, one of the notes of your repeated quarter note could be a bass note instead of a repeated quarter note. So let me see if I can do this. See how I'm replacing two, three, four, 1, 2. And usually, I think we so often think about bass notes, hit the little bass note on beat 1, and that's possible. But in this style, since we like these big voicings in the middle of the piano, I keep the chords on beats 1, and then, as the harmonic rhythm might dictate, also on beat 3. And I hit the bass notes on the off beats. So on 2 or 4, 2, 4. I'm probably hitting more bass notes than I actually would, but that's okay. It's also fun, and I talk about this in the book. By the way, that book, again, what a book. Playing solo jazz piano. I like delaying or anticipating the bass notes. So check this out. So I'm not going to play the first E flat. I'm going to play. Of course, I wouldn't do it actually that much, but I just slide one in every now and then. Suspense, a little bit of tension, a little bit of variety, or you anticipate. Almost starts sounding like a bossa nova or something if I do it all the time. But if I just do it every once in a while, we'll do it somewhere where it doesn't interfere with the melody, like right there. Sometimes it's necessary because of a 10th that I can't reach, like that one. There's that delay. So it's really fun to play around with bass. Also the upper register, and a lot of that's kind of the same. It's going to be more on offbeats because I need to be near the middle of the piano on the downbeats to create the chord. So, and here, of course, I need to be playing the melody, so it's going to be more places like that are in between melodic phrases. Or it could just be watch the other stop start bottom video, those were interlocking sixths, interlocking fifths and sixths. If you haven't, go watch that video. What are you even doing? Here, bass, and then filling in the upper register. Hearing the delayed basses. So if you do too much, like I just did there, first of all, shame on you, shame on me, but it loses its intimacy, right? If you start doing all these virtuosic fills, it might be lovely, but now it doesn't sound like it's whispered to you in the dead of night. Right now it sounds like, oh, I'm showing off on the piano, but that's what I do. So I do try to kind of limit that to colors where I'm like, okay, I'm getting tired of all these dense chords in the middle of the piano. Let's throw in just a different splash of color somewhere else on the piano. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the inner voices, because I think that is, really important too. And I talk about that kind of at length in the book, and I just want to give you a little kind of brief summary here. So a couple things that are happening. One is that I think it's really interesting to try to hold notes over and create kind of suspensions between chords, or you can kind of introduce a tense note and create a suspension that way. So instead of going, watch my right hand thumb here, that's the resolution I probably would have done, but I'm going to hold it over. And then I have all these options to ornament this note. So, by the way, it's creating kind of a classic 4/3 suspension if you follow classical music. Okay, so I just ornamented the resolution. And then I could hold that note over. So I'm holding over this note. And again, I could ornament that more if I want, I think. Let's find out. It's at a very inconvenient place with that high melody. I don't really have a hand to ornament that very much. Here I'm holding over this note and this one. So I'm creating these suspensions. This is a classic 4/3. What is this one though? This is flat 9 or flat 2 to the root. So that's not a suspension you're really going to find in classical music. So it is different. They're not all kind of your classic suspensions. And this ornamentation, I think it's most effective with these kind of tense suspended notes, but it could also be with just your regular resolving note to the chord. So for example, here we're going I'm doing bad. You have a lot of options to kind of just add in little ornaments, add in a little bit of color. Or you could just be more freely melodic. I'm not trying to place any limits. It doesn't have to be a suspension or an ornament. It could just be that you're real good at improvising little counter melodies. But usually, because I need both hands to play the voicings, usually when I'm playing a melody, it is kind of some version of one of these lines, right? Watch my thumb on my right hand here. It's doing this. And so if I'm gonna improvise a melody, or a counter melody, all it's really doing is it's hanging around that line. So when I say ornament, what we're really doing is we're kind of taking a guide tone line or one of the inner kind of workings of our harmony, and we're just going to add to it a little bit. Now, last thing for this video, and by the way, stay tuned. Next up is the Stride Ballad. Last thing for this video is, I'm just going to start on one of the variations which I love, which is something that Keith Jarrett does a lot in his playing, which is that he adds in the skip beat of the kind of the snare brush pattern. So if the drummer's playing, they're probably not just playing chord notes. They're probably playing basically the ride cymbal pattern on the snare. So Keith sometimes will add in an eighth note, and there's two great places to add in your eighth note. It could be between beats 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So from your weak beat leading to your strong beat. And I like going from high to low here. So you can see that my right hand thumb is now becoming the repeated quarter note, and the top of the left hand is becoming that little offbeat skip beat. So it does kind of lock you in a little bit more, but you can find lots of ways to be creative here. One of my favorite cases of Keith doing this is not in a solo piano recording, but he has a duo album with Charlie Hayden where they play For All We Know, For All We Know, yeah. And he really keeps kind of this pattern going on for the whole time. In other places, Keith will put the little skip beat between beats 1 and 2 and beats 3 and 4, so following the strong beat. And usually he'll kind of do this kind of ascending. If you guys are fans of the album Melody With You at Night, he does that on a few ballads there. Out about this stuff all day, but this I think is enough to get you started. Just a reminder, this is the best place to get, if you want some of this written out for you, really spelled out for you, support me and support and get a great book by ordering it from my website, jeremysiskind.com. If you've gotten this far, I liked hearing the word pineapple in the comments. Shoot the word papaya into the comments. Let's keep it with tropical fruits. I hope many of you did get this far. Thanks for supporting the channel. Spread the word. And I will see you with a video about stride ballads sometime next week. Bye-bye.